6:30 in the morning on November 2, 1987. A 911 operator answers a call coming from 14 West 10th Street in Manhattan's Greenwich Village. The voice on the line is calm but shaken. It belongs to a woman named Hedda Nussbaum. She says her daughter is not breathing. She explains that the child ate vegetables the night before and now will not wake up. She sounds worried, but nothing in her words prepares anyone for what police and paramedics are about to walk into. When first responders arrive at the apartment, the story about vegetables falls apart almost instantly. What they see exposes one of the most disturbing child abuse cases in American history. A case that destroys the belief that abuse only happens in poor or unstable neighborhoods. A case that helps reshape child protection laws across the country. A case that becomes the first criminal trial in New York State to be televised from start to finish. This is the story of Elizabeth Lisa Launders, known to the world as Lisa Steinberg. And by the end, it becomes clear how warning signs were ignored, red flags were dismissed, and how a 6-year-old child suffered while many people failed to stop it. Inside the apartment, nothing feels right. Officer James Bode is one of the first on scene. The call described a child who would not wake up. What he finds looks nothing like a medical emergency caused by food. The apartment is dark and filthy. There are no working lights. Garbage and waste are scattered across the floor. The air smells foul, like a backed-up sewer. It is the kind of place that makes your skin crawl the moment you step inside. In the middle of this mess lies a 6-year-old girl. She weighs just 43 pounds. She is barely breathing. Her body is covered in bruises, some fresh, others older and fading. Black and blue marks overlap each other. Her feet are coated with thick layers of dirt, built up over time. A noticeable chunk of hair is missing from her head. She smells of urine and vomit. Later, the medical examiner will say there is hardly an inch of her body that is not marked by injury. But Lisa is not the only child in that apartment. Nearby, officers notice a makeshift playpen. Inside it sits a 16-month-old boy named Mitchell. He is covered in filth. His diaper is soaked. He is drinking spoiled milk. A rope is tied around his waist and secured to the bars of the playpen, keeping him trapped in place. It is not meant for safety. It is meant to control him. 2 children. 1 apartment. One of the most expensive neighborhoods in Manhattan. And 2 adults who are about to face serious questions. One of them is Joel Steinberg, 46 years old. He is a criminal defense attorney. He claims he has handled hundreds of adoptions. He comes across as arrogant and dismissive. When Detective Irma Rivera arrives and asks why he is not at the hospital with his dying daughter, his response is chilling. He says he needs to take a shower. He needs his coffee. He shows no urgency, no fear, no concern for the child fighting for her life. His routine matters more to him than anything else in that moment. The other adult is Hedda Nussbaum, 45 years old, a senior editor at Random House. When she steps into view from the back of the apartment, everyone freezes. Her face is badly damaged. Her nose has been broken more than once. Bruises in different stages of healing cover her body. There are infected wounds and cuts across her scalp. Her hair is thin, barely hiding the damage underneath. One detective later says she looks like someone who has been tortured. This is not a family home. It is a place of fear and control. Lisa is rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital in Manhattan. Doctors quickly discover a subdural hematoma, bleeding on the brain. This type of injury is usually seen in high-speed car crashes or serious falls from great heights. But Lisa was not in a car accident. She did not fall from a building. Doctors determined that someone struck her with extreme force. Afterward, she was left on a bathroom floor for hours without help. By the time she reaches the hospital, the damage is severe. To understand how this happened, you have to go back years before that morning. Lisa's story does not begin in 1987. It begins in 1981, with a teenager who believed she was making a loving and responsible choice. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Every story here matters, and every life deserves to be remembered. Join us so you never miss a case that could open your eyes, challenge what you think you know, and maybe even save a life. On May 14, 1981, Michelle Launders is 19 years old. She is young, scared, and pregnant. The baby's father is a 20-year-old college student who cannot provide financial support. Michelle wants her child to have a better life than the one she feels she can offer. After talking with her mother, she decides on adoption. Her mother supports her decision. Together, they believe they are doing the right thing. Michelle remembers a doctor she once visited while accompanying a friend to an appointment. His name is Dr. Michael Bergman. When Michelle learns she is pregnant, she contacts him. Dr. Bergman confirms the pregnancy. Then he suggests a lawyer who handles adoptions, someone experienced. That lawyer is Joel Steinberg. When Michelle and her mother meet Steinberg, he claims he has handled around 300 adoptions. They meet him on April 18, 1981, at a restaurant in Greenwich Village. Steinberg presents himself as professional and trustworthy. He describes the perfect adoptive family. A stable couple with good careers. A father who is an attorney, mature and established. A child who will grow up in Manhattan with every opportunity. He makes it all sound safe and simple. There is one requirement. Michelle must pay $500 in cash. No checks. No records. No paper trail. At 19, scared and overwhelmed, Michelle does not see this as a warning sign. She trusts the doctor who referred her. She trusts the lawyer sitting across from her. She believes him when he says this is how things are done. Lisa is born on May 14, 1981, at Beekman Downtown Hospital in Lower Manhattan. Michelle makes one clear request. She wants her daughter placed with a Roman Catholic family. Faith and values matter to her. Steinberg assures her that the adoptive family meets every requirement. Lisa is just 1 day old when Joel Steinberg takes her from the hospital. He does not bring her to another family. He brings her to himself. To his apartment on West 10th Street, where he lives with Hedda Nussbaum. They are not Catholic. No adoption papers are filed. No home study is done. No background checks take place. What happens is completely illegal. Michelle is told her baby has gone to a loving family on the Upper East Side. She believes the lie. For 6 years, it holds. While Lisa grows up in a home filled with fear and harm, her biological mother believes she made the right choice. By the time the truth comes out, it is already too late. Here is what you need to understand about Joel Steinberg. He was not just another lawyer who made bad choices later in life. He was a fraud from the very beginning. He was born on May 25, 1941, in the Bronx. He grew up in a Jewish family. His father was a lawyer. His mother worked in foster care. With that background, you would expect someone who understood responsibility, law, and the duty to protect children. Instead, he learned how to manipulate the system. Steinberg graduated from Fordham University in 1962. In 1964, he enrolled at NYU Law School. He dropped out after just 1 semester. He never earned a law degree. He never finished law school. But history handed him an opportunity. The Vietnam War was escalating, and the military needed manpower. In 1965, Steinberg joined the Air Force. When he was discharged, he discovered a loophole in the system. During wartime, law students whose studies were interrupted by military service could be admitted to the bar without taking the bar exam. You only had to prove you had been enrolled in law school. Joel Steinberg had been enrolled for 1 semester. That was enough. He claimed he had completed his degree. He lied. And based on that lie, he was admitted to the New York State Bar. No one caught it. No one double-checked. And for years, he practiced law under false pretenses. He worked as a criminal defense attorney and began handling adoptions, especially in Greenwich Village. As the years passed, his behavior became more erratic. His substance abuse worsened. His reputation declined. But he kept practicing. He kept taking babies from young, vulnerable women. He kept breaking the law. It was not until May 19, 1988, months after Lisa was already gone, that Steinberg was finally disbarred. The appellate division ruled that his original admission to the bar was invalid from the start. His license had been fraudulently obtained. Everything he had done as a lawyer had been done under false pretenses. But in 1981, none of that had come to light. Back then, he was still trusted. still meeting teenagers like Michelle Launders, still presenting himself as a professional, still taking children into his control. To understand how this tragedy unfolded, you also have to understand Hedda Nussbaum. She was not uneducated or unaware. She was intelligent, accomplished, and respected. Hedda was born on August 8, 1942. She earned a bachelor's degree from Hunter College in 1964. Later, she earned a master's degree in library science from Columbia University in 1971. She became a senior children's book editor at Random House. She worked on well-known projects, including Charlie Brown's Superbook of Questions and Answers in 1976. She also wrote books herself, including Plants Do Amazing Things in 1977 and Animals Build Amazing Homes in 1979. Inside one of those books was a dedication. It read, "To Joel, my everyday inspiration." Hedda met Joel Steinberg at a party in the spring of 1975. By January 1976, she had moved in with him. At the time, she described him as the most wonderful man she had ever met. Charming, intelligent, successful. From the outside, their life looked impressive. But abuse does not begin with violence. It begins quietly, with criticism, with control, with fear disguised as concern. By 1977, just a year after moving in together, the physical abuse began. Around the same time, drug use entered their lives. What started as experimentation slowly became something darker. By 1980, Steinberg's behavior worsened dramatically. The control became absolute. The violence escalated. By the time Lisa arrived in 1981, Hedda was already trapped, already injured, already emotionally broken. She stayed because she believed she had no escape. She believed Steinberg had special powers, that he could read minds, that he could heal people, that she needed him to survive. This is what long-term abuse does. It does not just harm the body. It destroys judgment. It reshapes reality. It convinces victims that danger is normal and escape is impossible. When Lisa entered their lives, Hedda poured all her love into the child. For a short time, things appeared normal. There are photos from Lisa's early years. A smiling baby, a happy toddler, two adults posing as proud parents. Nothing in those images reveals the truth. But abuse cannot stay hidden forever. When Lisa started school, the cracks began to show. She enrolled at PS 41 in Greenwich Village. At first, teachers described her as healthy, bright, and outgoing. She smiled often. She talked easily. She made friends. She was curious and eager to learn, the kind of child teachers remember fondly. Then slowly she changed. Between 1983 and 1987, the joyful child faded. Lisa became quiet, withdrawn, nervous. The smile disappeared. She began showing up to school with visible injuries. Bruises, cuts, black eyes, dirty clothes, matted hair, patches of hair missing from her head. A friend who lived on the same block noticed it too. That family watched Lisa's condition worsen over time. Scrapes turned into bruises. Bruises turned into black eyes. Then large marks covering her body. Then missing hair. Whenever someone asked what happened, Lisa gave the same answer. She said she was playing with her brother, that they were roughhousing. But Mitchell was a toddler. The explanation never made sense. Neighbors grew afraid. Many suspected Joel Steinberg. They described him as having two personalities. Charming one moment, terrifying the next. He knew people. He had influence. Some believed reporting him would only make things worse for Lisa. So they stayed silent. Others did not. Neighbors heard shouting, arguments, sounds of violence coming from the apartment. Police were called multiple times. Officers arrived and saw Hedda with bruises and injuries. Each time, she made excuses. She said she fell. She said it was an accident. She refused to press charges. With no complaint, officers left. And the cycle continued. Child Protective Services received multiple reports, starting as early as 1983. A colleague of Hedda's at Random House called the Child Abuse Hotline. Another tenant in the building reported concerns, believing that if Hedda was being hurt, Lisa was in danger too. In 1984, the Human Resources Administration investigated. Their conclusion was that there was no evidence of child abuse. The case was closed. The file was deleted. The pattern was ignored. Each report was treated as a separate incident. There was no system to connect them. No centralized record showing that multiple people, from different places, were calling about the same child. Every warning came in. Every warning was brushed aside. And Lisa continued to suffer. By October 1987, Lisa was in first grade. On October 20th, a student teacher named Stacy Weiss noticed Lisa had a black eye and a bruise stretching across her forehead. She reported it to her supervisor, Sylvia Heron. She said she believed Lisa was being abused. Later testimony would reveal she was criticized for getting too involved. She was told not to make accusations, to step back, to mind her role. 4 days later, on October 24, 1987, came the moment that could have saved Lisa's life. Joel Steinberg was driving Lisa on the New York State Thruway toward Albany. At the Woodbury toll barrier near Harriman, a toll collector saw Lisa in the car. She was 6 years old. Her forehead was bruised. She was crying uncontrollably. The toll collector believed she might be witnessing a kidnapping. She contacted state police. Troopers stopped Steinberg and questioned him. He gave conflicting explanations for Lisa's injuries. First he said she hurt her neck. Then he changed the story. The troopers photographed Lisa's injuries. They documented the encounter. And then they let Steinberg drive away with her. For weeks later, Lisa was gone. October 30th, 1987, was Lisa's last day of school. It was the school's Halloween party. Children wore costumes. Lisa arrived with no costume. Her hair was matted. A black eye marked her face. She stood apart from the others, quiet and alone. A photograph from that day still exists. Lisa standing by herself while other children celebrate around her. Her expression is serious, almost distant, as if she already knew what was coming. November 1st, 1987. A Sunday evening. In most homes, families are winding down. Dinner is being made. Kids are getting ready for school the next day. At 14 West 10th Street, something very different is happening. Joel Steinberg is under the influence of illegal drugs. Hedda Nussbaum is there with him. And 6-year-old Lisa is in danger. What happened that night is known because Hedda later testified about it. Between 4 and 7 in the evening, an argument broke out inside the apartment. Steinberg forced Lisa and Hedda to eat hot peppers. After that, he ordered them to drink several glasses of water. They did not want to. They were in pain. They resisted. That angered him. No one saw what happened next except Joel Steinberg himself. But the medical evidence tells the story clearly. Somewhere during that time window, he struck Lisa. This was not a slap. It was not a shove. It was a powerful blow to her head. The kind of force that causes bleeding in the brain. Doctors would later explain that this type of injury is usually seen in serious car crashes or falls from great heights. It takes tremendous strength. The kind of force that can kill trained athletes. Joel Steinberg used that force on a child who weighed just 43 pounds. Lisa collapsed. She lost consciousness. She did not cry. She did not move. Joel handed her limp body to Hedda. Then he did something almost impossible to understand. He left the apartment. He went out to dinner with a friend. Before leaving, he told Hedda to let Lisa sleep. He said he would wake her when he got back. Think about that for a moment. A child is unconscious from a head injury you caused. Not sleeping. Unconscious. And you leave. You do not call for help. You do not rush her to a hospital. You do not even check if she is breathing. You walk out the door and go eat dinner. Joel returned around 7 in the evening. Lisa was still unconscious, lying on the bathroom floor. Instead of calling for help, Joel and Hedda spent the next several hours using drugs. While they did this, Lisa's brain continued to swell. Her body slowly shut down. She lay alone on a cold bathroom floor, dying without medical care. Hedda would later say she believed Joel had special healing powers. She believed calling for help would be an act of disloyalty. She believed he would fix everything when he was ready. This is the level of psychological control he had over her. She watched a child die and did nothing because her abuser had convinced her that he was untouchable. Hours passed. 6, 7, 8. Finally, around 6 in the morning on November 2nd, Lisa stopped breathing. Hedda tried to revive her. She pressed on her chest. She breathed into her mouth. Nothing worked. She told Joel they needed to call for help. At first, he refused. Eventually, he agreed. At 6:35 a.m., Hedda called 911. She told the operator that Lisa had eaten vegetables and gotten sick. She said the child was having trouble breathing. An ambulance was dispatched. When first responders arrived, they knew immediately this was not a food-related illness. This was severe abuse. Lisa was rushed to St. Vincent's Hospital. Police secured the apartment and began their investigation. Detective Irma Rivera arrived shortly after. She would later speak publicly about this case many times. She was one of the first detectives inside the apartment. The first thing she noticed was the filth. This was an expensive area of Manhattan, yet the apartment looked neglected and chaotic. There were no working lights. Trash was everywhere. The smell was overwhelming. Then she saw the makeshift playpen. Inside it was a 16-month-old boy with light hair and blue eyes. A rope was tied around his waist, securing him to the bars. He was dirty. His diaper was soaked. When Detective Rivera approached, he smiled at her. Most children that age cry when strangers appear. This child smiled, as if desperate for kindness, for attention, for help. Detective Rivera untied him, picked him up, and held him. Other officers took him to be medically examined. He would later be returned to his biological mother. Then Hedda Nussbaum came into view. The reaction from everyone in the room was the same. Her face was badly injured. Her nose had been broken multiple times. Bruises covered her face and body, some old, some fresh. There were scars and infected wounds. Her hair was thin and gray, barely covering cuts on her scalp. She looked far older than her 45 years. Detective Rivera later said she looked like someone who had been tortured. As officers documented Hedda's injuries, the full extent of the damage became clear. She had multiple broken ribs, a shattered nose, a fractured cheekbone, a broken jaw, severe ear injuries from repeated blows, a split lip, darkened eyes, chronic infections, malnutrition. One leg was so badly infected that doctors considered amputation. A physician later testified that Hedda was as badly injured as any abuse victim he had ever seen who survived. Throughout all of this, Joel Steinberg appeared irritated. When Detective Rivera asked why he was not at the hospital with Lisa, he repeated the same words he had used earlier. He said he needed to take a shower. He needed his coffee. He spoke about being a lawyer, trying to intimidate, trying to control the situation like he always had. Detective Rivera was not intimidated. She told him she did not care who he was. He was coming with them. That made him angry. He did not like being challenged, especially by a woman, and especially by someone who would not play along. At one point, Joel looked at the back of Hedda's head. The cuts and missing hair were visible. He told her to go inside and put on a hat. He did not want police to see the injuries. Detective Rivera confronted him directly and asked if he was trying to hide the damage. Joel grew angrier, but there was nothing he could do. Hedda went inside and came back wearing a blue head covering. They were taken to the precinct. As they walked down the stairs, Joel put his arm around Hedda, trying to appear caring, trying to control the image, trying to make sure she stayed silent. At the station, police separated them immediately. A video team from the district attorney's office arrived to document Hedda's injuries. Detective Rivera assisted. She held a ruler next to Hedda's legs as they filmed. When Hedda lifted her pant legs, the room went quiet. Bruises of every color covered her skin. Some wounds were open and infected, covered with gauze. There was barely any uninjured skin. What stayed with Detective Rivera was Hedda's eyes. Despite everything, she could still see kindness there. She felt compassion for her. That compassion would later be questioned by the public. Many people believed Hedda was just as responsible as Joel. She had been there. She had not called for help in time. Prosecutors saw it differently. They believed she had been abused so severely and for so long that she was no longer capable of clear, rational thought. They believed she was not mentally free to act. Joel Steinberg, meanwhile, stood in a holding cell, making comments, trying to maintain a sense of control. When Detective Rivera passed by, he insulted her, trying to belittle her position. She replied calmly and truthfully. He was a prisoner. He hated her from that moment on. At the hospital, doctors fought to save Lisa. But the damage was too great. The swelling in her brain was massive. The injury was catastrophic. Without immediate medical care, there was no chance of recovery. Lisa had been left on a bathroom floor for nearly 8 hours. By the time help arrived, it was already far too late. On November 3, 1987, doctors ran tests that showed there was no brain activity. Lisa could not think, feel, or wake up. Her brain had stopped working. The next day, November 4th, at 4:30 in the afternoon, doctors officially declared her brain dead. Machines were the only thing keeping her breathing. On the morning of Friday, November 5th, at 8:40 a.m., the respirator was turned off. Lisa Steinberg died at just 6 years old. The moment she passed away, the case against Joel Steinberg changed forever. What had started as assault and attempted harm was now something far more serious. The charges were upgraded to second-degree murder, first-degree manslaughter, and endangering the welfare of a child. He was going to trial. And this time, the entire country was watching. But before the courtroom doors opened, another truth had to be faced. This was not only about one man. This was about a system that failed again and again. Because Joel Steinberg did not act in a vacuum. He was enabled, protected, ignored. Remember the reports to Child Protective Services. They did not begin after Lisa was injured. They went back years, starting in 1983. Report after report was made. Each one was reviewed. Each one was closed as unfounded. How did that keep happening? A caseworker would come to the apartment. They would knock on the door. Joel would answer. He was calm, polite, educated. A lawyer living in Greenwich Village. He would invite them inside, show them around, explain everything away. The apartment looked fine. Nothing seemed urgent. The caseworker would leave. File closed. No one spoke to Lisa alone. No one checked her body carefully. No one asked neighbors what they had seen or heard. No one connected the dots with police calls that had already come from the same address. Each agency worked separately. No one shared information. No one saw the full picture. Lisa didn't just fall through the cracks. She fell into something much deeper. And she wasn't the only one. Dozens of children were being missed every year. Lisa's case only became famous because the ending was impossible to ignore. At her school, PS 41, at least 14 adults had direct contact with Lisa in her final years. 8 noticed that she often looked unclean and withdrawn. 5 saw bruises on her face, her arms, her back. Not a single formal report was filed. But because they were not trained properly. Because many believed that abuse did not happen in their school, in their neighborhood, to children like Lisa. Abuse was seen as something that happened somewhere else. To other families. In other places. Poor places. Dangerous places. Greenwich Village was seen as safe. Educated. Respectable. Child abuse was not supposed to live there. But it did. It was happening right in front of them. And they did not see it because they did not want to believe it. There is an old saying that the best place to hide something is in plain sight. Joel Steinberg understood that perfectly. He did not hide Lisa away. He took her to restaurants. He brought her to dinner with friends. He sent her to school. Because he knew that no one would believe a successful lawyer in a wealthy neighborhood could harm his child. He trusted the system to give him the benefit of the doubt. And for years it did. When police finally searched the apartment thoroughly, they found far more than signs of abuse. They discovered large amounts of illegal drugs. Cocaine, marijuana, heroin. They found scales, baggies, and equipment used to process drugs. They found $25,000 in cash, $5,000 in traveler's checks, a loaded firearm, and tools used for breaking locks. Joel Steinberg was not just a lawyer who had lost control. He was involved in serious criminal activity on multiple levels. The drugs. The fraud. The illegal adoptions. The abuse. This was not random. It was organized. It had been going on for years. And no one had stopped him. There was more. Investigators found evidence of at least one other illegal adoption. A doctor named Peter Saras had helped facilitate it. The baby was a boy named Mitchell. His birth mother, Nicole Smidgel, was only 16 years old when she became pregnant. Joel told her the same story he had told Lisa's mother. He promised to find a good family for her child. Instead, he kept the baby for himself. After Lisa's death, Mitchell was taken out of the home and returned to his biological mother. She renamed him Travis Christian Smidgel. He grew up with her and her parents on Long Island. By all accounts, he had a normal life. A safe life. The life Lisa should have had. As for the doctors and assistants involved in these illegal placements, they were questioned and investigated. But the full network was never completely uncovered. How many other babies were placed this way? How many other families were deceived? How many other children ended up in dangerous homes? We don't know. The focus stayed on Lisa. On her death. On getting justice for her. And justice was coming. But it would not be simple. It would divide people. And it would force the country to face uncomfortable truths about violence inside the home, about who is believed, and about who is ignored. Lisa Steinberg died on November 5, 1987. By the next day, the story was everywhere. Front pages. Evening news. Radios. The images were hard to forget. Joel Steinberg in handcuffs. Lisa lying in a hospital bed, described by the media as a sleeping child who would never wake up. The public reaction was immediate and intense. This was not supposed to happen in Greenwich Village. Not in a middle-class home. Not to a child raised by a lawyer and a book editor. Abuse was supposed to belong to broken homes, not brownstones worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the truth was undeniable. Abuse does not care where you live. It does not care about education, money, or status. It happens behind closed doors, in expensive apartments and public housing alike. And the signs are always there, if people choose to see them. Lisa's funeral was held on Thursday, November 12, 1987, at a funeral home in Greenwich Village. Nearly 1,000 people attended. Most of them had never met her. They came because they were heartbroken. Because they were angry. Because they felt guilty. Because they wondered if this could have been stopped. The small white and gold casket was covered in flowers. Roses. Lilies. Carnations. Stuffed animals lined the room. Teddy bears. Dolls. Gifts meant for a child who would never open them. People cried openly. Teachers from her school. Neighbors. Parents who looked at their own children and felt fear settle in their chest. One speaker stood up and said words that filled the room and stayed there. She said, "We are all to blame. This could happen anywhere." She was right. This was not only one man's crime. It was a collective failure. Every person who saw bruises and stayed silent. Every caseworker who didn't look deeper. Every officer who left after a call. Every teacher who noticed changes but didn't push harder. Every neighbor who heard screaming and turned the volume up. Everyone played a part. And now Lisa was gone. The person with the greatest right to be at that funeral was Michelle Launders, Lisa's biological mother. The young woman who had given her baby up believing she was choosing a better life for her child. She had not heard a single thing about Lisa since handing her over years earlier. Now, she was planning her daughter's funeral. Imagine that. Making the hardest choice of your life out of love. Trusting professionals. Trusting the system. Only to learn years later that your child was never legally adopted. That she was hurt again and again. That she died while adults around her did nothing. Michelle had every reason to break. Instead, she stepped forward. She made sure Lisa was buried with dignity. She made sure her classmates could say goodbye. She made sure the little girl who had been failed in life was finally protected in death. Lisa Steinberg was buried at Gate of Heaven Cemetery in Hawthorne, New York. Michelle Launders chose the location herself. Cardinal John O'Connor attended the service. Over 1,000 people filed past the casket, paying their respects. Flowers, candles, notes, and stuffed animals were left at 14 West 10th Street, turning the sidewalk into a makeshift memorial, a reminder of a life stolen too soon. Even those who couldn't attend wanted to act. In the weeks following Lisa's death, thousands of people called child abuse hotlines. They reported suspected abuse, checked on neighbors, and made sure other children didn't suffer the same fate. Nationwide, child abuse hotline calls spiked by 83%. Lisa's death had woken people up, but would it lead to real change? That answer would come only with the trial. On October 25, 1988, nearly a year after Lisa's death, the trial of Joel Steinberg began at the state Supreme Court in Manhattan. Judge Harold Rothwachs presided. The prosecution team, led by Peter Castillo and John McCusker under District Attorney Robert Morgenthau, charged Steinberg with second-degree murder, first-degree manslaughter, and endangering the welfare of a child. His defense attorneys, Ira London and Adrian DeLugio, faced the daunting task of keeping him out of prison. If convicted of second-degree murder, Steinberg faced 25 years to life. First-degree manslaughter could land him 8 1/3 to 25 years. The stakes were enormous. The trial was historic. It was the first criminal trial ever televised in New York State, part of an 18-month experiment that would eventually lead to court TV. Cameras captured everything. Millions watched from home. Suddenly, trials were no longer private. The nation witnessed Joel Steinberg sit at the defense table, Hedda Nussbaum take the witness stand, and the evidence unfold. Transparency, accountability, and raw human drama played out in real time. The first bombshell came on October 26, 1988. District Attorney Morgenthau announced that all charges against Hedda Nussbaum were dropped. In exchange for her testimony against Steinberg, she would walk free. The public reaction was explosive. How could she be allowed to go unpunished? She had been there. She had done nothing while Lisa died. She had delayed calling 911. She seemed, to many, just as responsible as Steinberg. Prosecutor John McCusker explained the reasoning. Extensive psychiatric evaluations had shown that Hedda was so physically and mentally incapacitated by years of systematic abuse that she could not be held criminally responsible for Lisa's death. She suffered from severe battered woman syndrome, completely under Steinberg's control. She believed he had supernatural powers, could read minds, could heal, and that defying him would bring unimaginable consequences. In her mind, calling 911 without his permission was impossible, like walking through walls or flying. The prosecution's strategy was clear. Ha was a victim too, and her testimony was essential to convict Joel Steinberg. The defense strategy was equally clear: blame Ha. They tried to convince the jury that she had killed Lisa, that Joel was merely at dinner when it happened, and that Ha's story was a fabrication. Defense attorney Ira London painted Ha as delusional, mentally ill, and involved in bizarre, even satanic behavior, claiming she alone delivered the fatal blow. The stage was set for a battle between two competing narratives. Medical testimony began. Dr. Douglas Miller of NYU Medical Center described how Lisa's brain had been smashed into the walls of her skull, comparing her injuries to those suffered by professional boxers who die from head trauma. The blow required tremendous force, impossible to happen from a fall or minor accident. Dr. Mary Lell, chief of pediatric neurology at St. Vincent's Hospital, confirmed the injuries were consistent with a violent, forceful blow by a strong adult. Assistant medical examiner Dr. Aglay Charlot testified that Lisa had died from a subdural hematoma, bleeding in the brain caused by blunt trauma. He explained how the impact tore blood vessels, creating swelling that cut off oxygen and caused Lisa's brain to essentially drown in its own fluids. The critical point: if Lisa had received immediate medical care, she would almost certainly have survived. The blow was serious, life-threatening, but treatable. Instead, she lay on a bathroom floor for 8 hours. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Morally, if not legally, Joel Steinberg had killed Lisa. The prosecution presented a history of abuse: old bruises, healed fractures, scars at different stages. This was years of cruelty, a pattern of terror and neglect. Photographs of the apartment, the filth, the darkness, the makeshift playpen where Mitchell had been tied up, the drugs, cash, gun, and lockpicks, all painted a portrait of a man not just capable of abuse, but of organized, calculated evil. Then, on December 2, 1988, Ha Nussbaum took the stand. Cameras rolled. Millions watched. Her face, though partially reconstructed, bore the permanent scars of Steinberg's brutality. She looked fragile, haunted, damaged. For 5 days, she relived her worst memories, recounting the systematic abuse she had endured and the night Lisa died. Ha described meeting Joel in 1975, moving in with him in 1976, and the early signs of abuse in 1977, a slap, a push, escalating into severe beatings. She described how he broke her nose repeatedly, fractured her ribs and jaw, and beat her legs so badly doctors considered amputation. Every detail showed how he controlled her every move, what she ate, when she slept, where she went, what she wore. He told her she was worthless, that no one else would ever want her, that she needed him, that he was special, that he had powers. And through years of manipulation, she believed him. Ha recounted Lisa's final night. Joel forced them to eat hot peppers, demanded they drink water, and when Lisa refused, he became furious. Ha heard a thud. Joel had struck Lisa and handed her unconscious body to Ha, instructing her to let her sleep. Then he left for dinner. Ha lay beside Lisa for hours, helpless, hoping Joel would fix it. He returned and began smoking crack. Multiple pleas to call an ambulance were ignored. Ha watched as Lisa's breathing became shallow, irregular, then stopped. She tried to revive her, pumping her chest, breathing into her mouth. Nothing worked. By the time 911 was called, Lisa was already gone. The prosecutors asked Ha directly, "Why didn't you call 911 immediately?" Her answer stunned the courtroom. "I believed Joel had supernatural healing powers. I believed calling for help without his permission would make things worse. I believed he would fix it." The jury sat in silence, absorbing the weight of her words. This was the star witness, the woman meant to prove Joel Steinberg's guilt, testifying that she had watched a child die because she was too terrified to make a phone call. Some jurors saw a broken woman, psychologically destroyed, trapped by years of abuse. They felt compassion. Others didn't believe her at all. They thought she was lying to save herself, perhaps even blaming Joel for something she had done. The defense was relentless. Ira London cross-examined Ha for days, painting her as delusional, mentally ill, involved in drugs and past relationships that supposedly discredited her. He tried to convince the jury that Ha had killed Lisa out of jealousy and that Joel had nothing to do with it. But Ha remained firm. She told the truth as she knew it. Joel delivered the fatal blow, and she was powerless to stop him. The defense called their own witnesses, attempting to shift blame to Ha, suggesting she had opportunity and motive. They claimed Joel was at dinner during the critical hours. But the evidence told a different story. What about the old bruises, the healed fractures, the missing hair, the neighbors who had heard screaming and saw Joel's violence? Multiple witnesses described Joel as controlling, intimidating, and dangerous. Hairs forcibly removed from Lisa's head were found on his clothing. Fresh bruises marked his knuckles. He admitted to police he had knocked Lisa down, and she didn't get up again. The prosecution's case was clear. Joel Steinberg had abused Lisa for years, and that night, he went too far. The medical evidence was indisputable. Someone had hit Lisa hard enough to cause fatal brain trauma. The delay in seeking help ensured her death. The question was, who struck her, Joel or Ha? Closing arguments began in January 1989. Prosecutor Peter Castellaro reminded the jury, Joel Steinberg had chosen drugs over his daughter's life. He had inflicted the injuries and failed to seek help. He was guilty. Defense attorney Ira London pleaded, Ha Nussbaum was lying. Joel tried to save Lisa, but it was too late. Don't convict an innocent man based on the testimony of a mentally ill woman. Judge Harold Rothwax gave the jury their instructions. They could convict Joel of second-degree murder if they believed he acted with depraved indifference to human life. First-degree manslaughter applied if he intended to cause serious physical injury. They could convict on both, one, or neither. The jury deliberated for 8 days. The split was clear. Some wanted murder, some manslaughter, some were unsure. They were divided on Ha's credibility. Joel had not testified, invoking his Fifth Amendment rights. The decision rested on the witnesses and evidence alone. On January 30, 1989, at 6:40 p.m., the verdict came. The courtroom, packed and live on camera, fell silent. Count 1, second-degree murder, not guilty. Gasps echoed. How could he escape a murder conviction? Count 2, first-degree manslaughter, guilty. Justice, in part, had been served. Joel Steinberg was now a convicted felon. The compromise reflected the jury's struggle. They could not agree on depraved indifference but were unanimous that he intended serious physical harm. He was also convicted of endangering the welfare of a child, relating to Mitchell, the 16-month-old found tied in filth. Sentencing was set for March 24, 1989. Joel spent 8 weeks in jail awaiting his fate. On sentencing day, Joel stood before Judge Rothwachs. Observers described his speech as rambling and self-centered. He spoke of his grievances, of failures in the system, but never of Lisa. He never acknowledged the pain he caused, never apologized. Judge Rothwachs listened and imposed the maximum sentence allowed by law, 8 1/3 to 25 years in prison. The courtroom erupted. Joel Steinberg, a man who had terrorized and destroyed lives, was finally going away. Not forever, but for a long time. Joel immediately filed an appeal, arguing that failure to seek medical care could not prove manslaughter intent and that the jury instructions were flawed. The appellate division rejected his claims. His conviction stood. Lisa's story, though tragic, had led to justice. Her death exposed systemic failures, revealed the darkness hidden behind privilege, and reminded the nation that abuse knows no boundaries. August 8, 1991. Joel Steinberg's appeal was denied. The New York Court of Appeals agreed. June 11, 1992. Another appeal denied. Judge Judith Kay wrote that his arguments lacked merit. His conviction stood. Joel would serve his sentence, but for how long? With good behavior and parole, 8 1/3 to 25 years could mean far less than the maximum. In 2001, 12 years after sentencing, Joel applied for parole. The board reviewed his behavior, letters from victims and citizens, and asked him if he accepted responsibility for Lisa's death. He did not. He blamed Ha, maintained his innocence, showed no remorse. Parole was denied. In 2002 and 2003, the result was the same. Still no remorse. Still no acceptance of responsibility. Then, in 2004, things changed. Joel had served nearly 17 years. The parole board determined he met the requirements for release. Programs completed. Time served. Rules followed. On June 30, 2004, Joel Steinberg walked out of prison a free man. The public was outraged. 17 years for killing a 6-year-old. 17 years, and he got to walk free while Lisa never had a chance to live. It wasn't satisfying. It wasn't justice in the emotional sense, but it was the law. He was released to a halfway house in Harlem, but Joel could not follow the rules. He gave unauthorized interviews, spoke about the case, and was expelled. He moved to a ground-floor apartment in Harlem. Reports described him living in squalor, asking for rotting produce, begging for cigarettes. He was 83 as of 2024, if still alive. His last confirmed interview came in 2017, on the 30th anniversary of Lisa's death. And in that interview, he revealed nothing had changed. When asked about Lisa, he said, "What did she die of?" "She died of pulling the plug." He blamed the doctors, blamed life support, took no responsibility for the blow that caused her brain damage, the 8-hour delay in help, or anything else. Joel Steinberg remained, until the very end, the same remorseless man. No obituary confirmed his death. He may still be alive, fading into obscurity, or gone unnoticed. Either way, he disappeared from public view. Ha Nussbaum's story, however, was far more complicated. After the trial, she underwent multiple reconstructive surgeries. Her face would never be the same, but doctors did what they could. She worked with therapists, attended support groups, and tried to rebuild her life. She co-facilitated battered women's support groups for 8 years, helping others escape abusive relationships, sharing her story, offering hope. Some saw redemption. Others saw hypocrisy. How could she help others when she hadn't helped Lisa? Ha also worked as a paralegal for organizations supporting battered women. Controversial to some, but again, others saw it as her attempt to make amends. In 2005, she published Surviving Intimate Terrorism, detailing her abuse, manipulation, and fear under Joel. The book included a foreword by Gloria Steinem, highlighting how domestic violence can destroy a person's ability to act rationally. Critics accused Ha of profiting from Lisa's death. Advocates argued her story needed to be told, to educate, prevent future tragedies, and show how abuse distorts reality. When Joel was released in 2004, Ha fled New York, reportedly moving to Hackensack, New Jersey, and changing her name. She sought privacy, safety, and distance from the media. Between 2009 and 2017, her papers, letters, legal documents, photographs, and book drafts were donated to Smith College's Sophia Smith Collection, closed during her lifetime. She would be 82 today, though she has made no public appearances since 2020. Ha Nussbaum, victim or accomplice? She suffered unimaginable abuse, yet she watched a child die. The answer is both. Evidence of her abuse is overwhelming. 9 broken ribs, a gangrenous leg, a broken nose, jaw, cheekbones, chronic infections, years of systematic torture. No one could doubt she had been victimized. But she was an adult in that apartment while Lisa was dying. She had the ability, if not the psychological strength, to act. The legal system ruled she was not criminally responsible. But the court of public opinion was divided then and still is today. Detective Irma Rivera, who saw Ha's injuries firsthand, believed she was a victim too, noting her kind eyes and the terror in her demeanor. But for those far from the case, judgment was harsher. What about the other survivors? Travis Christian Smigel, the 16-month-old boy found tied to the playpen, was returned to his birth mother and raised in privacy. By 2004, he was starting college, his life intentionally kept private. Michelle Launders, Lisa's biological mother, attended every day of Joel's trial, sitting behind him in the courtroom, witnessing the man who had promised to care for her daughter instead destroy her. Michelle ensured Lisa was buried at Gate of Heaven Cemetery with dignity. Over 1,000 people attended, including Cardinal John O'Connor. In 1990, Michelle published Don't Call Her Lisa Steinberg, reclaiming her daughter's identity. Elizabeth Lisa Landers, never legally adopted by Joel, never his to rename. Michelle also pursued civil action against Joel, continuing the fight for justice. Lisa's story is tragic, but its impact endures. It exposed the depths of abuse, the failures of the system, and the resilience of those left behind. Her death, Ha's survival, Joel's eventual release, and the divided opinions around them show the complexities of justice, accountability, and human frailty. In 1999, Michelle Launders received a $985,000 settlement from New York City. The city admitted it had failed Lisa, Child Protective Services had dropped the ball, investigations had been inadequate, and the system bore some responsibility for her death. In 2007, Michelle won a $15 million civil judgment against Joel Steinberg. Of course, he had no money, no assets. He could never pay it. But the judgment was symbolic, a legal acknowledgement that he had destroyed Lisa's life and Michelle's, and that he owed a debt he could never repay. Michelle has chosen privacy since then. No public appearances, no interviews. She lost her daughter in the most horrific way imaginable and owes the world nothing more. Detective Irma Rivera retired from the NYPD in 2007 after 26 years of service. She had been one of the first detectives in the child abuse unit of Manhattan's sex crime squad. She'd investigated cases most people couldn't imagine, cases that would break anyone. Rivera said Lisa's case taught her how to compartmentalize, how to look at autopsy photos, interview witnesses, testify in court, all without breaking down. But it came at a cost. In 2021, on the podcast Mic'd in New Haven, Rivera spoke about the Steinberg case for the last time publicly. She described arriving at that apartment in November 1987, seeing the filth, untying Mitchell from the playpen, witnessing Ha's injuries, and Joel's arrogance. She said the case stayed with her for decades. After retiring, she founded SAG Intelligence Group as a private investigator and appeared on channels like A&E and Netflix's Homicide New York, though the show never covered Lisa's case, perhaps because it had already been explored in depth, or because it was still too raw. The doctors involved in the illegal adoptions faced scrutiny, but limited consequences. Dr. Michael Bergman, Dr. Peter Saros, and Jean Libra all played roles in placing children with Joel Steinberg without proper legal procedures, background checks, or home visits. But the investigation focused on Joel, on Lisa, on justice. The illegal adoption ring was never fully dismantled. We still don't know how many children were placed illegally or how many vulnerable women were exploited. The system failed there. Yet Lisa's death did spark change. Concrete reforms were implemented to prevent future tragedies. The Mayor's Task Force on Child Abuse and Neglect, chaired by Dr. Vincent Fontana, recommended that police and child protective services coordinate investigations into domestic violence cases, recognizing the link between spousal abuse and child abuse. They also introduced a third reporting category for unconfirmed reports. Previously, cases were simply founded or unfounded. If unfounded, files were deleted. Patterns were invisible. Now, unconfirmed concerns could be tracked, allowing intervention before abuse escalated. The New York City Board of Education mandated training for all school personnel on identifying child abuse. Teachers, administrators, nurses, and counselors had to complete courses on spotting physical and behavioral signs of abuse, how to talk to children, and how to report concerns. New York State education law, effective January 1, 1989, required all professionals seeking licensure, doctors, social workers, therapists, anyone working with children, to complete training on recognizing and reporting abuse. It was no longer optional. Nationally, child abuse hotline calls surged by 83% after Lisa's death. People who had once ignored warning signs now acted. They reported suspected abuse, checked on neighbors, protected children. Dr. Fontana remarked, Lisa Steinberg's legacy is that middle-income families now relate to child abuse. It's not just a low-income disease. The critical shift was understanding that abuse could happen anywhere, in mansions or tenements, in families with wealth or without. Vigilance mattered more than status. Lisa's case also exposed failures in adoption oversight. She had never been legally adopted. Had she been, social workers would have conducted home visits, interviewed checked references, and discovered the abuse. Stricter regulations were enacted for private adoptions, more supervision, legal safeguards, and penalties for violations. These reforms saved lives, even if they couldn't bring Lisa back. Beyond laws, Lisa's case changed culture. People began to see child abuse and domestic violence not as distant problems, but as realities demanding attention and action. The trial itself, the first criminal proceeding ever televised in New York State, brought unprecedented public scrutiny. Cameras captured Joel Steinberg at the defense table, Nussbaum walking to testify, and the medical evidence of Lisa's injuries. Millions watched, forming opinions, feeling outrage, debating responsibility. The televised trial became a national conversation on abuse, victimhood, and justice. Its success led directly to the creation of Court TV in July 1991, founded to broadcast trials live and give the public insight into the real judicial system. Court TV lasted until 2008, eventually rebranded as True TV, but its influence endures. Cameras are now standard in courtrooms, trials streamed on YouTube, public accountability transformed. Lisa's story also inspired fiction. Law and Order aired 2 episodes based on her case, the first on November 27, 1990, titled Indifference. A 6-year-old girl is found beaten to death, her adoptive father is charged, and a battered woman testifies. The episode mirrored reality intentionally, highlighting Joel Steinberg's arrogance, narcissism, and lack of remorse. It forced viewers to confront the fact that abuse happens everywhere, often in families who seem respectable. Lisa Steinberg's death left a scar on the city, the nation, and everyone who followed her story. But through reforms, public awareness, and cultural change, her legacy lives on. Children are safer, adults are more vigilant, and the systems that failed her have been forced to change. Lisa didn't survive, but her story ensured others might. 15 years after the original Law and Order episode inspired by Lisa Steinberg's case, the show revisited the story. Season 15, Episode 11, titled Fixed, aired on January 14, 2005. David Groh reprised his role as Dr. Lowenstein, now out on parole and supposedly reformed. But in the episode, Lowenstein becomes a suspect in a new murder. The detectives are forced to ask the same question the world asked about Joel Steinberg himself. Had 17 years in prison changed him? Had he learned remorse? Was he safe to be around? The answer, revealed in Steinberg's 2017 interview, was clear. He had not changed. He felt no remorse. He blamed everyone but himself. Law and Order captured that truth. Beyond television, the case inspired a wave of books. In 1990, Joyce Johnson published What Lisa Knew, The Truth and Lies of the Steinberg Case. Johnson, a journalist who covered the trial extensively, offered a meticulous, unflinching account of what went wrong. Susan Brownmiller, a feminist activist and author of Against Our Will, released Waverly Place in 1989, a fictionalized novel drawing from the case to explore domestic violence, power, and complicity. Sam Ehrlich published Lisa, Ha, and Joel, the Steinberg murder case in 1989, another journalistic examination of the tragedy. Ha Nussbaum herself added to the narrative with her 2005 book, Surviving Intimate Terrorism, with a foreword by Gloria Steinem. Love it or hate it, the book gave Ha's perspective, her account of years of abuse and her explanation for why she didn't save Lisa. Whether readers believe her is a personal judgment. Michelle Launders contributed her voice in Don't Call Her Lisa Steinberg, 1990, a mother's grief and anger, a demand that the world remember her daughter as Elizabeth Lisa Landers, not as Joel Steinberg's victim. In 2009 aired A Family Secret, the death of Lisa Steinberg as part of its American Justice series. The documentary remains the most comprehensive visual account of the case. Detectives, prosecutors, medical examiners, and journalists shared insights. Archival trial footage, photographs of Lisa, and the filthy apartment painted a vivid, heartbreaking picture. The documentary didn't shy away from hard questions. How did the system fail? What could have been done? Viewers were forced to confront their own responsibility. Would you call if you saw a child with bruises? Would you act if you heard screaming next door? These questions remain uncomfortable and necessary. Since the 2000s, the case has been revisited in podcasts, YouTube videos, Reddit threads, and countless articles. Each generation rediscovers it, asking the same questions. How could this happen? How did so many people fail? How can we prevent it from happening again? The answer is always the same. Pay attention, speak up, protect children, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or uncertain. Because the alternative is Lisa Steinberg. And there have already been too many Lisa Steinbergs. The case also reshaped child welfare policy. In the 1980s, child abuse was largely invisible. People knew it existed, but they assumed it was rare, confined to obviously dysfunctional families. Then high-profile cases hit headlines. Lisa Steinberg in 1987, baby Jessica falling down a Texas well in 1987, the McMartin preschool trial beginning in 1983. These stories forced the nation to confront a harsh reality. Abuse was everywhere. Lisa's case was particularly striking because it shattered assumptions about class and privilege. This wasn't a family living in poverty. This was a lawyer, a book editor, living in Greenwich Village. Abuse could, and did, happen anywhere. No neighborhood was safe, no family immune. The response was swift. States passed mandatory reporting laws, requiring teachers, doctors, social workers, and other professionals to report suspected abuse. Penalties for failing to report increased. Training programs were implemented, hotlines established, Child Protective Services received funding for more staff, lower caseloads, better oversight. The goal: catch abuse earlier, intervene before it became fatal, save children like Lisa. But these reforms brought new challenges. More reporting meant more investigations. More investigations meant more children removed from homes. Removal, even when necessary, is traumatic. The system faced a constant dilemma: be too aggressive and families are torn apart unnecessarily, be too cautious and children die. There's no formula, only human judgment. And humans make mistakes. Over the decades, the system has swung back and forth. After high-profile deaths, authorities act aggressively, removing more children. Then lawsuits follow for wrongful removals, and the system pulls back. Then another child dies. The cycle repeats. Lisa's case represents the moment when the system was too cautious, too willing to close cases and give parents the benefit of the doubt. Reforms were essential, but they created new complexities. Today, child welfare is stronger than in 1987, but it remains imperfect. Children still fall through cracks. Monsters still hide in plain sight. Warning signs are still sometimes ignored. So what is Lisa Steinberg's legacy? In many ways, it is profound. Laws changed, policies improved, awareness rose. Thousands of children have been saved because adults now notice what they might once have overlooked. Teachers report what they would have ignored, caseworkers investigate further, systems intervene sooner. Yet the hard truth remains: child abuse has not been eliminated. Children continue to be harmed, killed by parents, caregivers, and people entrusted to protect them. According to the latest U.S. Department of Health and Human Services data, approximately 600,000 children are confirmed victims of abuse and neglect each year. Millions more go unreported. About 1,700 children die from abuse and neglect annually, more than 4 every single day. For Lisa Steinberg's every day. These numbers should shock us. They should anger us. They should demand action. But too often they don't. We've grown numb. Abuse has become normalized. It's easier to look away than to confront the reality: we are still failing children on a massive scale. Lisa Steinberg's story reminds us that vigilance, courage, and action are not optional. They are essential. Because the cost of inaction is always a child's life.